The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the streets of Seattle still gleamed like black glass under the streetlights. Vera Hayes stood at her office window on the 14th floor, watching the city breathe in that quiet space between midnight and dawn. Her reflection stared back at her sharp blazer hair, still perfect, despite the 16-hour workday, and eyes that held the particular exhaustion of someone who had forgotten how to sleep. Behind her, the open laptop cast its cold blue glow across the conference table. Spreadsheets, projections, and all the numbers that spelled out the same inevitable truth Hayes and Blake Marketing had 3 months left. Maybe 4 if they were lucky. She wasn't feeling lucky. The elevator chimed in the hallway. Vera didn't turn. Only one other person had a key card that worked at 2 in the morning. Owen Blake's footsteps were almost silent on the polished floor. He'd always moved like that carefully, as if afraid of taking up too much space in the world. When she finally glanced at him in the window's reflection, he was standing in the doorway with 2 paper cups of coffee and an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're going to burn out," he said quietly. "Already burned." Vera accepted the coffee without looking at him directly. "Now I'm just Ash pretending to be on fire." Poetic. "It's 2 a.m. I'm allowed to be dramatic." Owen moved to stand beside her at the window, maintaining that precise distance he always kept close enough to be present, far enough to be safe. 4 years of being business partners had taught them both the exact geography of that space. "I have an idea," he said. Vera took a sip of coffee. Too hot. She drank it anyway. "If it involves selling kidneys, I should tell you I already looked into it. Turns out there's a lot of paperwork." "Marry me." The coffee burned going down. Vera turned to look at him for the first time since he'd entered the room. Owen was staring straight ahead at the city, his profile carved in blue light and shadow. He wasn't smiling. He never smiled, not really. Just that careful upturn of lips that people in business meetings mistook for warmth. "I'm sorry," Vera said slowly. "I think the sleep deprivation is making me hallucinate. Did you just... for 3 days?" Owen finally turned to face her. His eyes were very dark and very tired and holding something she'd never seen there before. "Marry me for 3 days. Portland, the Gaines pitch." Vera's mind, usually so quick to calculate angles and outcomes, went perfectly blank. Then it all clicked into place with horrible, perfect clarity. "Walter Gaines," she breathed. "Walter Gaines. The man who only works with stable families. The man who could save our company. The man whose son killed himself after a divorce." Owen's jaw tightened. Yes. The space between them suddenly felt very small. Vera set down her coffee cup before she dropped it. "Owen, that's insane." "I know. And we can't just pretend to be married." "Why not?" His voice was still quiet, but something underneath it had shifted. "We've been pretending for 4 years anyway." "Pretending what?" Owen looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out 2 plane tickets. "That this is just business," he said. "That we're just partners. That we don't..." He stopped, started again. "We leave it tomorrow, 6 a.m. I already booked us at the Sentinel Hotel. Same floor. Connected rooms if you want them, separate rooms if you don't." Vera stared at the tickets. "You're serious." "I'm always serious. It's one of my many charming qualities." "Owen, he's our last chance, Vera." Owen's careful mask finally cracked just a little, just enough. "Every other investor has walked. The banks won't touch us. In 3 months, we'll have to let everyone go. Julia, Thomas, Rachel, all of them, people who trusted us." Vera knew all of this, had been carrying it around like stones in her pockets for weeks. But hearing Owen say it out loud made it real in a way that the spreadsheets never could. "Why marriage?" she asked. "Why not just business partners traveling together?" "Because Walter doesn't just want to see a stable relationship. He wants to believe in it." Owen set the tickets down on the conference table between them. His son was married for 8 years, apparently happily. Then one day his wife left, and 6 months later, he was gone. Walter's entire philosophy now is that if you can fake a marriage well, you can fake anything. He only trusts what he can see as real. But it wouldn't be real. Owen's expression did something complicated. Wouldn't it? The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Vera's heart was doing something erratic and unprofessional in her chest. She thought about Marcus, about the divorce papers she'd signed 2 years ago in a lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and broken promises. about how she'd sworn she'd never let anyone that close again, about how Owen had been closer than anyone for 4 years, and she'd never let herself think about what that meant. "I need to think," she said. "Think on the plane." Owen picked up his coffee, that careful distance already rebuilding itself between them. 6 a.m. Vera, I'll be at your apartment at 4:30. And if I say no, he looked at her one more time, really looked at her in that way he almost never allowed himself. Then I'll go to Portland alone and try to save us by myself, but we both know how that ends. He was gone before she could find the words to stop him. The elevator chimed again. Vera stood alone in the blue-lit office, staring at 2 plane tickets and feeling like she'd just been handed a key to a door she'd spent 2 years keeping locked. Her phone buzzed. An email. She almost didn't check it. The sender's name made her blood run cold. Marcus Hayes. The message was one line, "I know about Portland. We need to talk." Vera's hands were shaking. She deleted the email, then deleted it from trash, then stood there in the dark office, heart racing, while the city outside continued its slow breathing, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed like a warning. Vera didn't sleep. Instead, she packed a suitcase at 3 in the morning with the kind of aggressive precision that came from not wanting to think. Business casual, heels, that black dress she'd bought for client dinners and never worn because it felt too much like trying. At 3:45, she stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was 32 years old and looked 40 in the wrong light. There were shadows under her eyes that concealed or couldn't quite hide. Her hair was the same honey blonde it had always been, but lately she'd started finding silver threads that caught the light like tiny accusations. When had she gotten so tired? When had she started being so afraid? The buzzer rang at exactly 4:30. Owen Blake, always on time, always reliable, always standing at exactly the right distance. Vera pressed the intercom. "Coming down. I'll get your bag." Of course he would. Owen was nothing if not carefully considerate. It was one of the things that made him such a good business partner. One of the things that made him so hard to read. The Seattle morning was still dark and rain-wet when Vera stepped outside. Owen's car was idling at the curb, a sensible sedan that matched his sensible life. He was already loading her suitcase into the trunk, moving with that quiet efficiency that made everything look effortless. "You came," he said, not a question. "I'm thinking on the plane, like you suggested." Something flickered across his face. Relief, disappointment. With Owen, it was always impossible to tell. Fair enough. The drive to the airport was silent. Not uncomfortable, they'd mastered that particular silence 4 years ago, but weighted with everything they weren't saying. Vera watched the city slide past in streaks of headlights and shadow. She thought about Marcus's email, about the word no, about how her ex-husband had always had a talent for showing up exactly when she least wanted him to. "Can I ask you something?" Owen said suddenly. "You just did." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "Why did you get divorced?" Vera had been expecting questions about the pitch, the logistics, the lie they were about to tell. This caught her completely off guard. "That's personal. We're about to pretend to be married." Seems relevant. "We're about to pretend to be happily married." Different thing entirely. Owen glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "Is there a difference? Have you ever been married?" "No." "Then trust me, there's a difference." They lapsed back into silence. But now it felt different, charged with something Vera couldn't quite name. She found herself studying Owen's profile in the dashboard light. Strong jaw, straight nose, the kind of face that photographs well but somehow always looks slightly remote in person, like he was standing behind glass even when he was right next to you. "Marcus cheated," Vera heard herself say, "not physically, emotionally, with his work, with his ambitions, with everything except me. One day I woke up and realized I'd been sleeping next to a stranger for 3 years. So I left." Owen's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He was an idiot. Or I was too demanding. "No," Owen's voice was sharp, certain. "You deserved someone who saw you, really saw you, not just the parts that were convenient." Vera's throat felt tight. "And what parts of me do you see, Owen?" He didn't answer, just pulled into the airport parking garage and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, she could hear both of their breathing. "All of them," he said finally, quietly. "I see all of them, Vera. That's the problem. Before she could respond, he was out of the car pulling their bags from the trunk, rebuilding that careful distance with every movement. Vera sat in the passenger seat, heart hammering, wondering what the hell she had just agreed to. SeaTac Airport at 5:30 in the morning had the surreal quality of a dream. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The coffee at the gate tasted like it had been brewed sometime last week. Owen bought them both breakfast sandwiches that neither of them ate. They sat at the gate in silence. Vera checked her phone compulsively. No new emails from Marcus. Somehow that was worse than if he'd sent another message. The not knowing. The waiting. Vera. She looked up. Owen was watching her with that careful attention he usually reserved for client presentations. Whatever you're worried about, we'll handle it. You don't know what I'm worried about. I know you. He said it so simply, like it was obvious. Like 4 years of working 16-hour days and building a company from nothing had given him some kind of map to her inner landscape. The terrifying thing was that he might be right. The boarding call came. They filed onto the plane with all the other early morning travelers, business people, and families, and that one guy who was definitely still drunk from last night. Vera and Owen had seats in the emergency exit row. More legroom. Owen had thought of that too. He always thought of everything. The plane took off into a sky that was just beginning to turn gray at the edges. Vera watched Seattle disappear beneath them, all those lights blinking out as the sun crept closer. Beside her, Owen was reading something on his tablet, some proposal for Walter Gaines that they'd both memorized weeks ago, but kept revising anyway as if the perfect words might save them. Tell me about him, Vera said. Walter, the real story, not just the pitch. Owen set down the tablet. He's 63, built his real estate empire from nothing after his father's company went bankrupt. Married to the same woman for 40 years, Claire. One son, Daniel. Who died? Who died? Owen's voice was carefully neutral. 2 years ago, Daniel was 35, married 8 years to a woman named Rachel. No kids, by all accounts they were happy. Then Rachel left, filed for divorce. 6 months later, Daniel drove his car off the Aurora Bridge. Vera felt something cold settle in her stomach. Jesus. Walter found him, was the first one there. Owen looked out the window at the clouds. After that, he changed. Wouldn't do business with anyone who wasn't in a committed relationship. Wouldn't even take meetings unless you brought your partner. His therapist probably has some thoughts about that, but it's what it is. And you know this how? Owen hesitated. Just for a second. I met Walter once, 10 years ago. Before any of this. Before Daniel. Before... He stopped. Before what? Before I knew you, Bon, Owen said quietly. He was different then. Softer. I was pitching some startup idea that went nowhere. But we had coffee, talked about families. He showed me pictures of Daniel and Rachel's wedding. Said he'd never seen his son happier. Owen's jaw was tight. I think about that sometimes. How quickly everything can change. How you can think you know what happiness looks like, and then it's just gone. Vera found herself wanting to reach for his hand, stopped herself. Is that why you never married, because you're afraid it'll end badly? No. Owen finally looked at her, really looked at her. I never married it because I was waiting. For what? The question hung between them. The plane hit some turbulence. The seatbelt sign dinged on. Owen turned back to his tablet without answering, and Vera understood that some doors once opened were harder to walk through than others. She pulled out her own phone, checked email again. Still nothing from Marcus. But there was a message from Julia, her assistant. Good luck in Portland. You got this. P.S. Whatever Owen's planning, just trust him. He knows what he's doing. Vera stared at the message. How much did Julia know? How much had she guessed? The plane descended through clouds. Portland appeared beneath them, smaller than Seattle, greener the Willamette River, cutting through it like a silver vein. Vera's stomach was doing complicated things that had nothing to do with the turbulence. When they landed, Owen turned to her. Last chance to back out. And go home to what? Fair point. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Okay, here is what we need to know. We've been married for 2 years. We met at a marketing conference in San Francisco. You spilled coffee on my laptop. I asked you to dinner to make up for your terrible aim. 6 months later, I proposed at that same conference. Small wedding in the San Juan Islands, just immediate family. Vera's brain was already cataloging the details. Anniversary, June 14th. How do I take my coffee? Black, 2 sugars, but only if it's good coffee. Otherwise, you drink it like medicine and complain the entire time. Favorite food? You say it's sushi, actually it's grilled cheese, specifically from that place on Pike Street that you pretend you don't stop at twice a week. Vera stared at him. How do you? I notice things. Owen stood up, grabbing their bags from the overhead bin. Your turn. How do I take my coffee? Black, no sugar. And you're lying when you say you like it that way. You actually hate coffee, but drink it because you think you're supposed to. Something flickered across Owen's face. What else? You're left-handed but eat right-handed because your father told you it was improper. You're allergic to shellfish but always order it at business dinners and just push it around your plate. You love old movies, specifically film noir from the 40s, but never talk about it because you think people will find it pretentious. Vera heard her own voice getting quieter. You have a scar on your left shoulder from a car accident when you were 16. You never talk about that either. And you... She stopped. And what? You look at me sometimes like I'm a question you're afraid to ask. The plane had emptied around them. They were alone in the cabin with the flight attendants starting to clean. Owen set down the bags very carefully. Vera, we should go, she said quickly. Walter's probably already at the hotel. Owen studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Right, let's go sell him a lie. They walked off the plane together, and Vera tried not to think about the fact that the line between lying and telling the truth had just gotten significantly blurrier. The Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland was exactly the kind of place Owen would choose elegant, without being ostentatious, historic without being stuffy, the kind of establishment where business deals were made over whiskey in the mahogany-paneled bar. Vera had checked their rate online during the Uber ride from the airport. One night cost more than she'd spent on her wedding dress to Marcus. The thought made her slightly ill. Mr. and Mrs. Blake, Owen said to the woman at the front desk, smooth as glass. We have a reservation. Vera's stomach lurched. Mrs. Blake. She'd kept her maiden name when she married Marcus. Hayes was her mother's name, the one good thing she'd gotten from that side of the family. Now here she was taking Owen's name without a second thought, and it felt both completely fake and dangerously real. The receptionist smiled. Of course. Welcome to the Sentinel. You're in the waterfront suite on the 7th floor. King bed river view. Mr. Gaines specifically requested that floor for all the pitch participants. King bed. Vera felt Owen go very still beside her. She glanced at him. His expression was perfectly neutral, but she'd learned to read the tiny tells, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hand tightened just a fraction on his briefcase handle. Perfect, Owen said. Thank you. The elevator ride up was silent. Vera watched the numbers climb 3, 4, 5 and tried to remember how to breathe normally. This was fine. They were professionals. They'd figure it out. The suite was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette exposed brick walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. And in the center of it all, one very large king bed with crisp white linens and approximately 1 million pillows. Owen set down their bags very carefully. I can sleep on the couch. Don't be ridiculous. That couch is 5 feet long, and you're 6'2". I've slept in worse places. Owen, Vera turned to face him. We're supposed to be married, happily married. If Walter or anyone else sees you coming out of here with back problems because you slept on a couch, what's that gonna say? That my wife thinks I snore. Do you snore? No idea. Never had anyone to ask. The admission hung in the air between them. Vera had known Owen was single, obviously, but somehow hearing him say it out loud made it feel different, more real, more complicated. We're adults, Vera said, trying for a confidence she didn't feel. We can share a bed without it being weird. Can we? The question was quiet, but weighted with something Vera didn't want to examine too closely. She turned back to the window, watching the river slide past below. We don't have a choice. Behind her, she heard Owen exhale slowly. Right. Professional. I'll take the left side. I don't move much in my sleep. How do you know if you've never had anyone to ask? I had a roommate in college. He took detailed notes. It was slightly concerning. Vera found herself smiling despite everything. You had a roommate who took notes on your sleep patterns. Medical school. He was concerned I had sleep apnea. Turned out I'm just very still when I sleep. Apparently it's unsettling. What isn't unsettling about you, Owen Blake? The words came out lighter than she'd intended, but they landed with a strange weight. Owen was silent for a long moment. When Vera finally turned to look at him, he was standing by the window with that carefully neutral expression that meant he was feeling everything and showing nothing. I'm going to shower, and he said. Walter wants to meet us for drinks at 7. The bar downstairs. Casual, but not too casual. He'll have his wife with him. Claire. She's formidable. Noted. Owen disappeared into the bathroom. Vera heard the water start and tried very hard not to think about the fact that Owen Blake was naked 20 feet away from her. This was professional. This was business. This was completely, absolutely fine. Her phone buzzed. Another email. Her hand shook slightly as she opened it. Marcus again. You're in Portland. I'm in Portland. Funny how that works out. Let's have dinner. Tonight, I promise I'm not going to make a scene. I just need to talk to you. Vera's blood ran cold. How did he know she was here? How did he know which hotel? She thought about the email from last night. I know about Portland and felt something close to panic rising in her chest. She deleted the message, but her hands were still shaking when Owen came out of the bathroom 15 minutes later, hair damp, dressed in dark jeans and a button-down shirt that should have looked casual but somehow just made him look more remote. You okay? He asked. Fine. You're a terrible liar. I'm an excellent liar. I'm just not lying to you. Owen's expression did something complicated. He crossed the room to stand beside her at the window, close enough that she could smell his soap, something clean and slightly woodsy, close enough that if she turned her head she could count his eyelashes. What's wrong? He asked quietly. Vera almost told him, almost showed him the emails. But something stopped her, some instinct that said, if Owen knew Marcus was in Portland, he might call the whole thing off, might decide the risk wasn't worth it. And they needed this deal, needed it like drowning people needed air. Just nervous, she said, about tonight, about pulling this off. Owen studied her face. She had the distinct impression he didn't believe her, but he didn't push. That was one of the things she'd always appreciated about him. He knew when to ask questions and when to let silence do the work. We'll be fine, he said. Just follow my lead. I've met Walter before. I know what he wants to hear. And what's that? That love is real, that it lasts, that two people can look at each other after years and still see something worth holding on to. Owen's voice was quiet, almost sad. He wants to believe his son's story could have ended differently. That somewhere out there, people are getting the happy ending. Daniel didn't. Vera felt her throat tighten. That's a lot of pressure for a fake marriage. Yes, Owen turned to look at her. Really look at her. It is. The hotel bar was all dark wood and dim lighting, the kind of place where conversations happened in low voices and everyone looked like they had expensive secrets. Vera and Owen arrived at 6:55, early enough to seem eager, not so early as to seem desperate. They'd calibrated the timing like they calibrated everything else carefully, precisely, with no room for error. Walter Gaines was already there. He sat in a corner booth with a woman who had to be Claire, silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of elegant that came from decades of knowing exactly who she was. Walter himself looked exactly like his photo 63 solid build, the kind of face that had probably been handsome in youth and had aged into something more interesting. Distinguished. But there was a sadness around his eyes that no amount of success could hide. Owen Blake, Walter said, standing. His handshake was firm. It's been a long time. 10 years, Owen agreed. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Walter. This is my wife, Vera Hayes Blake. The lie came out so smoothly that Vera almost believed it herself. She shook Walter's hand, then Claire's. Both of them were studying her with the kind of careful attention that made her skin prickle. Lovely to meet you, Claire said. Her voice had that particular warmth that wealthy women perfected, genuine seeming but impossible to verify. Owen's told us so much about your company. It sounds fascinating. They settled into the booth. Vera found herself pressed against Owen's side. The booth was smaller than it looked, or Maybe Owen had deliberately chosen this seat to force the proximity. His thigh was warm against hers. She could feel him breathing. "So," Walter said once drinks had been ordered, "tell me your story. How did you two meet?" This was it, the moment they'd prepared for. Vera felt Owen's hand find hers under the table fingers interlacing, like they'd done this 1,000 times. Maybe that was the scariest part, how natural it felt. "San Francisco," Owen said. "Marketing conference, 4 years ago. Vera spilled coffee all over my laptop during the keynote speech." Vera picked up the thread seamlessly. It was entirely his fault. He was sitting in the wrong seat. There was a very clear name card. There was a very unclear name card in a very dark auditorium. The lights were on. Barely. They were bickering, actually bickering with the ease of people who'd done this so many times that it had become a rhythm. Vera saw Claire smile, saw something in Walter's eyes soften just slightly. "How did you go from coffee disaster to marriage?" Claire asked. "I asked her to dinner," Owen said, "to apologize for sitting in the wrong seat and causing the entire incident." "To let him apologize," Vera corrected. "I was perfectly happy to never see him again." "But you said yes to dinner." "I was hungry." Owen's thumb moved against her palm, a tiny circle that sent electricity up her arm. "She was curious. That's different." "Curious about what?" Walter leaned forward slightly. Owen looked at Vera, really looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before, open and unguarded and holding something that made her heart skip. "About whether someone could see all my worst parts and still choose to stay." The words hung in the air. Claire's eyes were suspiciously bright. Walter was watching them with an intensity that made Vera want to squirm, and Owen's hand was still wrapped around hers, thumb still tracing those small circles like a secret language. "And did she," Claire asked softly, "stay is still here," Vera heard herself say. The lie felt too much like truth. They ordered appetizers. The conversation moved to safer topics, Portland, Seattle, the differences between the cities. But underneath it all, Vera felt like she was walking a tightrope. Every smile, every glance, every casual touch that Owen gave her felt both scripted and spontaneous. Like they'd rehearsed this, but also like they'd been doing it forever. "I should tell you," Walter said, eventually setting down his whiskey, "you're not the only firm pitching me this week. There are 3 others, all very good, all very qualified." "We understand," Owen said. "But here's what I want you to understand." Walter's expression grew more serious. "I'm not just investing in a company. I'm investing in people, in partnerships that work. My son—" He stopped, collected himself. "Daniel thought he had that, thought he'd found someone who would stay. And when she left, he couldn't see a way forward. So I need to know that what you two have is real. Not just a business arrangement, not just convenient, real." The weight of his words settled over the table like snow. Vera felt Owen's hand tighten around hers, felt her own heart hammering against her ribs. "It's real," Owen said quietly. And the terrifying thing was that when Vera looked at him, she couldn't tell if he was lying. They escaped the bar at 9:30 citing jet lag and an early morning pitch preparation. Walter and Claire seemed satisfied, or at least not suspicious. Vera and Owen rode the elevator up to the 7th floor in silence, both of them carefully not looking at each other. The suite felt different when they entered it, smaller. The bed seemed to take up the entire room. "That went well," Owen said, loosening his tie. "They believed us." "Did they?" Claire did. Walter's harder to read. Vera kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch. Her feet were killing her. Her head was spinning. And Owen Blake was standing by the window, silhouetted against the Portland skyline, looking like every romantic movie hero she'd ever tried, not to fantasize about. "Owen," she said carefully, "what you said down there, about me seeing your worst parts, that was a line," he finished. "I know. It's what Walter needed to hear." "Was it?" Owen turned to look at her. The city lights behind him made it impossible to read his expression. "Does it matter?" "Yes." Vera stood up suddenly, unable to sit still. "Because if we're going to do this, if we're going to lie to a man who lost his son to loneliness and heartbreak, I need to know where the performance ends and the truth begins." "Do you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm terrified," Vera thought but didn't say. "Because every time you touch me, I forget it's fake. Because 4 years of keeping you at arm's length is starting to feel like the biggest mistake I've ever made. Because, she said out loud, I need to know if I'm the only one who's confused. Owen crossed the room, stopped right in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He smelled like whiskey and that woodsy soap and something else, something that was just him. You're not confused, he said quietly. You're scared. There's a difference. Scared of what? The same thing I'm scared of. His hand came up, fingers barely brushing her jaw. That this isn't fake at all, that it never was. Vera's breath caught. Owen! The knock on the door made them both jump. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Owen ran a hand through his hair, messing up that careful perfection. Vera's heart was trying to escape her chest. Probably housekeeping, Owen said, but his voice was rough. He opened the door. It wasn't housekeeping. It was a woman late 20s, dark hair, the kind of beautiful that made you forget your own name. She was wearing jeans and a leather jacket and an expression of complete shock. Owen, she said. Owen went very, very still. Elena. The name hit Vera like cold water. Elena. Elena Gaines, Walter's daughter. The woman Owen had never mentioned. The woman whose eyes were currently traveling between Owen and Vera with dawning understanding. Oh my God, Elena said slowly. You're the pitch. You're the married couple. Her laugh was sharp, disbelieving. Owen Blake is married. Owen Blake, who told me 8 years ago that he'd never get married because marriage was just a legal contract people used to trap each other. That Owen Blake. Vera felt the world tilt sideways. She looked at Owen. He was staring at Elena with an expression she'd never seen before, something raw and complicated and ancient. It's not what you think, Owen said. Really? Elena's eyes were bright, dangerous. Because what I think is that you're standing here with a woman you're claiming as your wife, about to pitch my father, my grieving, heartbroken father, on the virtues of lasting commitment. And that's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the most manipulative. I'm leaning toward manipulative. Elena, does she know? Elena looked directly at Vera. Does your wife know that you asked me to marry you 8 years ago, that I said no, that you told me you'd never ask anyone else? The silence that followed was deafening. Vera couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stand there while her entire understanding of Owen Blake crumbled into something she didn't recognize. I think you should leave, Owen said quietly. I think your father should know exactly who he's considering investing in, Elena replied, but her eyes had softened slightly. When she looked at Vera, there was something almost like sympathy there. I'm not going to say anything. Not yet. But Owen, she shook her head. You can't build a future on a lie. Daniel taught us that. You of all people should know. She left. The door clicked shut. Owen and Vera stood in the silence, surrounded by the wreckage of everything they'd carefully constructed. You were engaged, Vera said finally. Her voice sounded strange, distant. It was a long time ago. You told me you'd never been married. You didn't mention almost married. It didn't seem relevant. Didn't seem, Vera laughed, and it came out broken. Owen, we're supposed to be convincing her father that our marriage is real, that love lasts, that commitment means something. And you didn't think it was relevant to mention that you'd proposed to his daughter? Owen's jaw was tight. It was 8 years ago, Vera. We were different people. Were you, yes? He moved toward her. She stepped back. Something flickered across his face. I was younger, stupider. I thought I knew what I wanted. And what did you want? Someone safe, someone who wouldn't make me feel. He stopped. Feel what? Everything, Owen said quietly. I wanted someone who wouldn't make me feel everything. And Elena was that. She was smart and beautiful and completely emotionally unavailable. Perfect. And then she said no. And then she said no. Owen's laugh was bitter. You want to know what she told me? She said I was in love with someone else. Someone I'd met once at some conference and couldn't stop talking about when I got drunk. She said I needed to figure out who that person was before I committed to anyone else. Vera's heart stopped. Owen, it was you, he said. 4 years ago, San Francisco, that stupid conference. You actually did spill coffee on my laptop. And when you apologized, you were so flustered and beautiful and completely unaware of how you lit up every room you walked into. I watched you give a presentation on emotional branding, and it was like seeing color for the first time, like understanding what everyone else had been talking about my whole life. The air had left the room. Vera couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was hearing. I never told you, Owen continued, never said anything, because you were married, because it wasn't appropriate, because I'd just been rejected by Elena, and I wasn't about to make a fool of myself twice. So I waited for you to divorce Marcus, waited for the right moment, waited for 4 goddamn years, Vera, watching you rebuild yourself, watching you trust everyone except me. Owen, and now we're here in Portland, pretending to be married, and I don't know if I'm supposed to keep pretending or if I'm finally allowed to tell you the truth. Vera couldn't speak. Her entire world had just reorganized itself around this one revelation. 4 years. 4 years of working side by side, of late nights and coffee runs and carefully maintained distance. 4 years of her thinking Owen was just a good friend, a reliable partner, someone safe. 4 years of her being completely, utterly blind. Say something, Owen said quietly. I don't know what to say. Say you feel it too. Say I'm not crazy. Say, we have a pitch tomorrow. Vera's voice came out harder than she intended. Professional, distant. We have a company to save, employees counting on us. Walter Gaines and his dead son and his daughter who knows we're lying. We have all of that, Owen. We don't have time for whatever this is. Whatever this is. Owen's expression closed off. Back to that careful neutrality. Right, of course, business first. Owen, I didn't mean... It's fine. He grabbed his laptop bag from the table. I'm going to work in the lobby. Give you some space. I'll be back late. You can have the bed. I'll take the couch. You don't have to. Yes, Owen said quietly. I do. He was gone before she could find words to stop him. Vera stood alone in the suite, staring at the bed they were supposed to share, listening to the ghost of all the things they'd never said to each other echoing in the silence. Her phone buzzed. Another email. She already knew who it would be. Marcus, last chance, Vera. Tomorrow night, dinner. If you don't show up, I'm going to have to take matters into my own hands. And trust me, you don't want that. Vera sat down on the bed, put her head in her hands, and finally let herself cry. Vera didn't sleep. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city filtering through the windows. Somewhere around 3 a.m., she heard the suite door open quietly, heard Owen moving around in the dark, the rustle of him settling onto the couch that was far too small for his frame. She almost called out to him, almost said his name, but the words stuck in her throat like stones. I wanted someone who wouldn't make me feel everything. It was you. 4 goddamn years. The words played on repeat in her mind until she wanted to scream. How had she been so blind? All those late nights working together, all those coffee runs and casual touches and moments when their eyes met across conference rooms. She told herself it was just partnership, just friendship, just the easy rhythm of two people who understood each other's working style. She'd been lying to herself for 4 years. When morning light finally crept through the windows, Vera gave up on sleep. She showered in the enormous bathroom, letting the hot water beat against her skin like punishment. When she emerged wrapped in the hotel's plush robe, Owen was already awake. He was standing by the window in running clothes, athletic shorts, and a fitted shirt that showed exactly how much time he spent at the gym. She'd never really noticed before, or maybe she'd been deliberately not noticing. Morning, he said. His voice was carefully neutral. Like last night hadn't happened. Like he hadn't torn apart her entire understanding of their relationship and left it scattered across the hotel room floor. Morning? Vera's voice came out rougher than she intended. Walter wants to go for a run. Owen was still looking out the window, not at her. 6:30, along the waterfront. He does it every morning when he travels. Wants us to join him. Both of us. Both of us. Owen finally turned. His eyes were shadowed. He hadn't slept either. Apparently Claire runs with him every morning at home. He wants to see how we are together when we're not performing. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. I didn't bring running clothes, Vera said. I figured. Owen gestured to a bag on the table. I bought you some. There's a Nike store in the lobby. I guessed your size. He'd guessed correctly. Of course he had. Owen Blake noticed everything. Vera changed in the bathroom, pulling on the leggings and sports bra and breathable shirt that fit like they'd been tailored for her. When she came out, Owen was lacing up his shoes, still carefully not looking at her. "We need to talk," Vera said. "We need to run." Owen stood, with Walter, and pretend that everything between us is exactly what we told him it is. "Owen, please." His voice cracked just slightly. "Not now, I can't." He stopped, collected himself. After. After the pitch. After we either save the company or watch it burn. But not now. Vera wanted to argue, wanted to demand that they deal with this now immediately before it consumed them both. But she looked at Owen's face and saw something there that made her throat tight. He was barely holding it together. One wrong word and he might shatter completely. "Okay," she said quietly. After. Walter Gaines ran like a man who was trying to outrun ghosts. Fast-paced, steady rhythm, and eyes forward. Owen and Vera fell into step on either side of him, the three of them moving through Portland's misty morning like a strange sort of military formation. "Beautiful city," Walter said, not even slightly winded. "Never gets old, this view." They were running along the waterfront, the Willamette River on their left, the city waking up on their right. Vera's lungs were burning. She ran occasionally and mostly on the treadmill at her gym when she felt guilty about too much takeout, but this was different. Walter set a pace that demanded everything. "How long have you two been running together?" Walter asked. Owen glanced at Vera. She caught the look, caught the question in it. "Since we got married," Vera said. "Owen's always been a runner. I wasn't. He convinced me." "How?" "He told me running was like meditation in motion." Vera was surprised to find herself telling the truth. Owen had said that once, months ago, when she'd mentioned her therapist suggested mindfulness practices, that it was the only time his brain stopped trying to solve every problem at once. Walter's expression softened. "My son used to say something similar. Running was his therapy. Better than the actual therapy, he used to joke." Vera felt Owen tense beside her. They rounded a corner, heading into a tree-lined path. The city noise faded, just their footsteps and breathing. "Daniel ran this route," Walter said quietly, "when he came to visit. Said it was the one place he could think clearly." He was silent for a moment. "I think about that sometimes. About all the clear thinking he must have done. About whether he was thinking about how to fix things or how to end them." The words hung in the misty air like accusations. Vera didn't know what to. Beside her, Owen's jaw was tight. "He didn't leave a note," Walter continued. "Just drove his car off the Aurora Bridge at 4 in the morning. Police said it was quick. Like that's supposed to be comforting. Like quick makes it better." "Walter," Owen started. "I'm sorry." Walter shook his head. "Claire says I shouldn't talk about it. Says it makes people uncomfortable. But I need you to understand why I'm so careful about who I work with. Why I need to believe that what you two have is real." Vera's chest felt tight. "Not from the running. It's real," she heard herself say. "How do you know?" Walter slowed to a stop. They were at a viewpoint overlooking the river. "How do you know when you've found something real versus something that just looks real from the outside?" Owen and Vera stood side by side, both breathing hard, both silent. Finally, Owen spoke. "You don't," he said. "Not for sure. You can't fact-check love like a business proposal. Can't run the numbers and predict outcomes. You just..." He stopped, looked at Vera, really looked at hers. "You just decide to believe in it, even when it's terrifying, even when every logical part of your brain is screaming that you're going to get hurt. You decide that the risk is worth it." Walter studied them both. "And is it worth it?" "Yes," Owen said. His eyes never left Vera's face. "It's worth everything." Vera felt something crack open in her chest. She reached for Owen's hand. He took it like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. Walter watched them, and Vera couldn't tell if he believed them or if he was just choosing to. "Let's head back," Walter said. "Pitch is at 10. I want you both at your best." They ran back in silence, but Owen's hand stayed in Vera's the entire way. The shower after the run was torture. Vera stood under the hot water, trying not to think about Owen in the next room, trying not to think about the way he'd looked at her on that viewpoint, trying not to think about anything except the pitch they had to deliver in 2 hours. She failed spectacularly. When she emerged dressed in her most powerful business suit navy, with a cream blouse, heels that added 3 inches, and confidence, she didn't feel Owen was sitting on the bed in his suit, staring at his laptop without really seeing it. You okay? Vera asked. Owen closed the laptop. Elena called. She wants to meet us for coffee before the pitch. That doesn't sound ominous at all. She says she wants to clear the air. That what she said last night wasn't fair. Or she wants to tell us she's going to expose us to her father. That too. Owen ran a hand through his still damp hair. Vera, about last night, you said after the pitch. I know, but Owen, Vera sat down beside him on the bed, careful not to touch but close enough to feel the heat of him. One crisis at a time. Let's deal with Elena, then the pitch, then Walter's decision, and then she stopped. Then what? Then we figure out what the hell we're doing. Owen's laugh was soft and bitter. I already know what I'm doing. I'm falling apart in a hotel room in Portland while pretending to be married to the woman I've been in love with for 4 years. Vera's breath caught. Owen, you don't have to say anything. Owen stood grabbing his jacket from the chair. I know this is complicated. I know I've made it complicated. I'm sorry for that, but I can't, his voice broke. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Not anymore. Not after last night. Then don't, Vera said quietly. Owen turned to look at her. What? Don't pretend. Vera stood closing the distance between them. For the next 2 days, don't pretend. Let's be whatever this is, real or fake or somewhere in between. And after we can figure out the logistics, the consequences, the aftermath. But for now, let's just be married, Owen finished. Be something. Vera reached up, straightening his tie even though it didn't need straightening. Something that feels less like lying. Owen's hand came up to cover hers. His touch was warm, solid, real. I can do that. Good. Vera stepped back before she did something stupid like kiss him. Now let's go have coffee with your ex-girlfriend and hope she doesn't destroy everything. Elena Gaines was waiting for them at a cafe 3 blocks from the hotel. She was dressed in lawyer-sharp business-wear fitted suit, perfect hair, the kind of polish that came from growing up with money. When she saw them, something flickered across her face. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. Something in between. Owen, Vera, she gestured to the empty chairs. Thank you for meeting me. They sat, ordered coffee. The silence was excruciating. I owe you an apology, Elena said finally. Last night was unprofessional. I was surprised and I reacted badly. Understandable, Owen said carefully. Is it? Elena's eyes were sharp. I accused you of manipulating my father. That's not... She stopped, started again. My father has been through hell. Losing Daniel nearly destroyed him. So when I saw you standing there claiming to be happily married, I thought you were taking advantage. We're not, Vera said. The lie came easily now. Or maybe it wasn't entirely a lie anymore. She wasn't sure. I know. Elena took a sip of her coffee. I spent half the night thinking about it. About you two. About the way you looked at each other. And I realized something. What's that? Owen's voice was wary. You're now not faking, but Elena looked directly at Owen. You're really in love with her. You have been for a while, maybe even 8 years ago when I rejected your proposal. The coffee shop noise faded to white noise. Vera's heart was hammering. Owen had gone very still. I don't know what you... Owen started. Don't, Elena interrupted gently. Don't insult my intelligence. You used to talk about her when you got drunk, after conferences. You'd have 3 whiskeys, and suddenly all you could talk about was this woman named Vera who gave a presentation on emotional branding that changed how you saw the world. Vera couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was hearing. I asked you about her once, Elena continued. You said she was married, that it didn't matter because she was married. And when I said we should break up, you didn't even fight me. You just looked relieved. Owen's hands were clenched on the table. Elena, I'm not mad, Elena said. I'm glad that you found her, that you're finally with the person you've been pining over for 8 years. She paused. You are together, right? This isn't just for my father. The question hung between them. Vera felt Owen's eyes on her, but felt the weight of everything they'd said and not said pressing down like gravity. It's complicated, Vera said carefully. Most real things are. Elena smiled. Look, I'm going to tell my father that I know you both, that I trust you, that whatever you're pitching is worth listening to. But Vera, she looked directly at her. If you hurt him, if this is just a game to you, I will make sure everyone in Seattle knows exactly what kind of person you are. It's not a game, Vera heard herself say, and meant it. Elena studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Then I hope you get everything you're pitching for. She stood leaving money on the table for her untouched coffee. The pitch is in an hour, a conference room on the third floor. Don't be late. She left. Owen and Vera sat in silence, surrounded by the morning cafe rush, both of them trying to process what had just happened. 8 years, Vera said finally, give or take. You talked about me when you were drunk. Apparently, Owen's voice was rough. I don't remember, but I believe it. Vera didn't know what to say, didn't know how to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew about Owen Blake, about herself, about the 4 years they'd spent building a company while carefully ignoring the thing building between them. We should go, Owen said. Prepare for the pitch. Owen. After, he said firmly. You said after. So let's get through this. Let's save the company. And then, he stopped. Looked at her with an expression that made her chest hurt. Then we'll figure out what 8 years of wanting someone actually means. The pitch was perfect. They'd rehearsed it so many times that it flowed like a conversation, each of them, picking up where the other left off their ideas, building on each other with the kind of synergy that investors dreamed about. Walter and his team listened with careful attention, asked smart questions, made notes. Elena sat in the corner watching them with an expression Vera couldn't quite read. When it was over, Walter stood and shook both their hands. Impressive, very impressive. I'll need a few days to make a decision. There are 3 other firms pitching this week, as I mentioned, but you've definitely given me a lot to think about. Thank you for the opportunity, Owen said. They filed out of the conference room. Elena caught up with them in the hallway. That was good, she said, really good. The way you two work together, it's like watching a dance. 4 years of practice, Vera said, or 8 years of waiting. Elena replied, looking at Owen, then softer. He's having dinner at the house tonight. My father. He wants you both to come. Meet the family. See where his priorities are. We'd be honored, Owen said. Elena nodded. Then to Vera, there's something you should know about tonight. My father invited someone else, someone he works with, corporate lawyer, does background checks on all potential investments. Vera's blood ran cold. Background checks. Standard procedure. Don't worry if you're who you say you are. There's nothing to worry about. Elena's eyes were kind but sharp. But if there are any skeletons in your closet, any secrets you'd rather not come out tonight, would be a good time to get ahead of them. She left. Owen and Vera stood in the hallway, the weight of Elena's warning settling over them like ash. Marcus, Vera said quietly. What about him? He's here in Portland. He's been emailing me, threatening me. Owen went very still. Since when? Since the night before we left. Vera pulled out her phone, showed him the messages. He knows about the pitch, about Walter. He's working for someone. Owen read the emails, his expression getting darker with each word. Jesus Christ, Vera. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have called it off. Damn right I would have called it off. We need this deal, Owen. I don't care. Owen's voice was sharp, scared. I don't care about the deal if it means putting you in danger. It's not danger. It's just Marcus being Marcus. Manipulative, controlling. He's threatening you. He's bluffing. Owen looked at her. Really looked at her. Elena just said Walter invited a corporate lawyer who does background checks. What are the odds that lawyer is working for whoever Marcus is working for? Vera felt the pieces clicking into place. The timing, the threats, the calculated way Marcus had always operated. We're being set up. Yes, someone wants this deal to fail. Someone who stands to benefit from Walter investing in them instead of us. Owen was already pulling out his phone. I need to make some calls, find out who else is pitching, Who has the resources to hire both a corporate lawyer and your ex-husband? Owen, we're not going down without a fight. His eyes were hard, determined. You and me, together. That's how we built this company. That's how we're going to save it. Vera felt something fierce and painful bloom in her chest. Together. Always. They spent the afternoon in the hotel suite making calls, pulling strings, using every contact they'd built up over 4 years in the industry. By 5 p.m., they had a name: Meridian Group, a Seattle-based marketing firm that had bid on 3 of the same clients as Hayes and Blake in the last 6 months, who had a reputation for playing dirty, who had the kind of resources that came from old money and no ethics, and who was pitching Walter tomorrow morning. They hired Marcus, Owen said, hanging up from his last call, as a consultant, specifically to dig up dirt on us. How did you find that out? I have a friend who works in HR at Meridian. She owed me a favor. Owen's expression was grim. Apparently Marcus approached them 3 weeks ago, said he had inside information on Hayes and Blake, information that could sink our pitch before we even walked in the room. Vera felt sick. What information? I don't know, but we're going to find out tonight, at Walter's house, when Marcus shows up as Meridian's corporate lawyer. The idea was horrifying and inevitable all at once. He's going to expose us. He's going to try by. Owen, if Walter finds out we're not really married, then we tell him the truth. Owen stood crossing to where Vera was sitting on the couch. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. We tell him that we lied, that we were desperate, that we thought a fake marriage was the only way to get his attention. And then we lose everything. Maybe. Owen's thumbs trace circles on her palms. Or maybe we tell him something else. Something that's been true for longer than either of us wanted to admit. Vera's heart was racing. What's that? That we're not really married. Owen's voice was quiet. Careful. But we want to be. The words hung in the air between them. Vera stared at Owen, at this man she'd worked beside for 4 years. This man who'd apparently been in love with her for 8. This man who was kneeling in front of her in a Portland hotel room, proposing something that was either brilliantly crazy or just crazy. Owen Blake, she said slowly, are you asking me to marry you for real this time? I'm asking you to consider the possibility. His eyes were dark and serious and holding something so vulnerable it made her chest ache. That maybe we didn't lie to Walter. Maybe we just told him the truth ahead of schedule. That's insane. Yes. We barely know each other outside of work. We know each other better than most married couples. We know how the other takes coffee, what makes them laugh, what keeps them up at night. We know the worst parts and the best parts and all the boring parts in between. We've never even kissed. Owen's expression did something complicated. We could fix that. Vera's breath caught. They were so close. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough that if she leaned forward just a little. The hotel room phone rang. They both jumped. Owen stood crossing to answer it. Hello, his expression changed. Yes, we'll be there, thank you. He hung up, looked at Vera. That was Walter's assistant. Dinner is at 7. Dress code is business casual. And Marcus will definitely be there. He's listed as Meridian's representative. Vera stood on shaky legs. So we have 2 hours to figure out how to handle this. Or, Owen moved closer, we have 2 hours to make what we told Walter true. You can't be serious. Why not? Owen's hand came up, fingers barely brushing her jaw. Vera, I've been serious about you since the moment you spilled coffee on my laptop and apologized 17 times, even though it was entirely my fault for sitting in the wrong seat. I've been serious about you through every late night, every client meeting, every moment I got to stand next to you and pretend I was only interested in business. Owen, 8 years is a long time to want someone. 4 years is a long time to work beside them and never say anything. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be careful. He stopped, started again. I want to walk into Walter's house tonight and tell him the truth. That we're not married yet. But we're going to be. Vera couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stand there while Owen Blake, the most careful man she'd ever met, threw caution entirely out the window. What if I say no, she asked quietly. Then I'll respect that. I'll walk into dinner tonight and we'll handle Marcus together as partners. And when we get back to Seattle, we'll go back to how things were. Except we can't, because now you know how I feel. And I know that he paused. You feel something too. I saw it this morning, on the viewpoint, when I was talking to Walter. You looked at me like what? Like maybe I wasn't crazy. Owen's voice was soft, almost pleading. Tell me I'm not crazy, Vera. She should say no. Should tell him this was too fast, too complicated, too everything. Should remind him about the company, the pitch, the very real possibility that they were about to lose everything they'd built. Instead, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. The kiss was nothing like Vera had imagined, and she had imagined it late at night when she couldn't sleep in quiet moments between meetings in the space between waking and dreaming, where she let herself want things she couldn't have. But this was different. Owen's lips were soft and firm and tasted like the coffee they'd had hours ago. His hands came up to frame her face gentle and sure, like he was holding something precious. And Vera stopped thinking entirely. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen's eyes were dark and dazed. So that's a maybe, he said. Vera laughed, actually laughed. That's a let's survive tonight and then talk about this when we're not in the middle of a crisis. Fair. Owen's thumb traced her cheekbone. But you kissed me. I did. And it was, don't fish for compliments, Blake. His smile was real this time. Not the careful business smile. Something genuine and slightly goofy and absolutely devastating. Yes, ma'am. They spent the next hour getting ready in a silence that felt completely different from before. Charged. Electric. Every time they passed each other in the suite, Vera heading to the bathroom, Owen adjusting his tie in the mirror, there was this awareness between them. Like the air itself had changed density. At 6:30, they stood at the door ready to leave. Vera in a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard. Owen in dark pants and a button-down that brought out his eyes. They looked at each other. Whatever happens tonight, Owen said, we handle it together. Together, Vera agreed. And after we figure out if I just kissed my business partner or my future husband. Owen's expression did something wonderful. I vote future husband. You don't get a vote. Marriage is a democracy. We're not married, Arden. Yet, he held out his hand. Ready. Vera took it. No, but let's go anyway. Walter Gaines's house was in the West Hills, a sprawling mid-century modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Claire answered the door, elegant in linen pants and a silk blouse, welcoming them with a warmth that felt genuine. So glad you could make it, she said. Walter's on the back deck. Elena's around somewhere. And we have another guest, a colleague of Walter's. I think you'll find him very interesting. The way she said interesting made Vera's skin prickle. They followed Claire through the house, all clean lines and expensive art, and the kind of understated wealth that came from generations of good taste. The back deck was massive, with a view that would have been stunning if Vera's stomach wasn't tied in knots. Walter was standing at the railing with two other people. One was a man in his 50s that Vera didn't recognize, the other Marcus. He turned when they entered. His smile was sharp and satisfied. He looked exactly the same as he had 2 years ago. Tall, handsome in a calculated way, the kind of confidence that came from never having been told no. Vera had loved him once, had married him, had woken up one day and realized she'd never really known him at all. Vera, Marcus said. Owen, what a small world. Owen's hand tightened on Vera's. Marcus, didn't expect to see you here. Didn't you? Marcus's smile widened. I work with Thomas here, Thomas Brennan. He's doing due diligence for Walter on all the firms pitching this week, including yours. Thomas Brennan looked uncomfortable. I should clarify, I'm an independent consultant. I don't work with Marcus. He reached out with some information he thought was relevant to my investigation. Information. Owen's voice was carefully neutral. About your company, your partnership, Marcus paused deliberately. Marriage. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Claire had gone very still. Walter was watching them all with careful attention. Elena appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I don't know what you think you know, Vera started. I know you're not married, Marcus said flatly. I know because I've been tracking you, Vera. Ever since you filed for divorce. Ever since you cut me completely out of your life like I was nothing. So when I heard you were suddenly married to your business partner, I did some digging. Marcus, Vera's voice was shaking. There's no marriage certificate, no public record, no wedding announcement, nothing. Marcus looked at Walter. They're lying to you. This whole thing is a performance. They thought they could manipulate you by pretending to be the happy couple you wanted to see. The silence that followed was deafening. Vera felt like she was falling, like the deck had opened up beneath her and she was tumbling into nothing. But Owen was smiling. Not the careful business smile. Something different. Something real. You're absolutely right, Owen said. Everyone stared at him. Vera's heart stopped. We're not married, Owen continued calmly. You did your homework, Marcus. Very thorough. There's no marriage certificate because we haven't filed one yet. No wedding announcement because we haven't had a wedding. He paused, looked at Vera. We're engaged. Vera couldn't breathe, couldn't process what Owen was doing. Engaged, Marcus repeated flatly. How convenient. Not convenient at all, actually. Owen's voice was steady, certain. We didn't tell Walter because we thought we worried that an engagement wasn't as stable as a marriage, that he'd see us as too new, too uncertain. So we lied. We said we were married when we were just... He stopped. When we were just two people who'd finally figured out what they meant to each other. Walter was watching them closely. When did you get engaged? Officially. Owen's hand found Vera's. 4 days ago. The night before we left Seattle, I showed up at her office at 2 in the morning with plane tickets and told her, his voice cracked slightly, told her I couldn't keep pretending, that I wanted this trip to be the start of something real. It was so close to the truth that Vera almost believed it herself, almost forgot that they were lying, almost forgot that the engagement was as fake as the marriage had been. Except Owen was looking at her like she was the only person in the world, like every word he was saying was true, like he meant every syllable. I proposed to her 8 years ago, Owen continued quietly, at a conference in San Francisco, in my head. I never said it out loud because she was married. But I knew. I've always known. Elena made a small sound. When Vera glanced at her, there were tears in Elena's eyes. And now, Walter asked, you're saying you're planning to get married for real. Owen looked at Vera. The question was clear, are we? Vera thought about the kiss 2 hours ago, about 4 years of working side by side, about all the small moments she'd dismissed as partnership when they'd been something else entirely, about the way Owen knew how she took her coffee and what made her laugh and all the tiny details that added up to being known. Yes, she heard herself say, for real. Marcus was shaking out his head. This is ridiculous. Walter, you can't possibly believe... I do, Walter said quietly. He was still watching them. I believe them. But they lied to you, Marcus pressed. They did. Walter's expression was so knowing. About the timeline, about the paperwork, but not about what matters. He turned to Owen and Vera. My son Daniel, before he died, before Rachel left, he told me something. He said the hardest part wasn't that she didn't love him anymore. It was that he'd never really let her see him. He'd been so afraid of being vulnerable, of showing her his worst parts, that he'd kept her at a distance their entire marriage. Walter's voice was rough with emotion. You two, when I saw you this morning, running together, holding hands, like you couldn't help it, that's what Daniel never had. That ease, that comfort. So I don't care about a marriage certificate. I care about whether you're willing to be real with each other, even when it's terrifying. Vera's throat was tight. Beside her, Owen's hand was shaking slightly in hers. We are, Owen said. We're terrified, but we're doing it anyway. Thomas Brennan cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Mr. Gaines, I did a full background check. Hayes and Blake marketing is solid. No financial irregularities. No legal issues. The only discrepancy was the marriage status. And now that's been explained. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue. But Claire had moved to stand beside her husband, her hand on his arm, and something about her expression made it clear the conversation was over. I think, Claire said gently, that Marcus has done enough investigating for one evening. Thomas, thank you for your thoroughness. Walter and I will take it from here. It was a dismissal. Thomas recognized it immediately, making his excuses and leaving. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at Vera with an expression she couldn't quite read. Hurt. Angry. You could have just told me, he said quietly. When we were married, you could have told me you weren't happy. I did, Vera said. You weren't listening. Marcus flinched, then nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess I wasn't. He looked at Owen. Take care of her. She deserves someone who actually pays attention. He left. The deck fell into uncomfortable silence. Elena was the one who broke it. Well, she said, voice thick with emotion. That was dramatic. Anyone want wine? I need wine. Dinner was surprisingly normal after that. Claire served salmon and roasted vegetables and told stories about Daniel that were funny instead of sad. Elena talked about law school and her work with her father's company. Walter asked thoughtful questions about Hayes and Blake's 5-year plan. And Owen and Vera. Owen and Vera played the part of an engaged couple so well that Vera kept forgetting it was a performance. Owen's hand on the small of her back when they moved from the deck to the dining room. The way he pulled out her chair. How he poured her wine without asking because he already knew exactly how much she wanted. The small smile he gave her when their eyes met across the table. It was all pretend, except it didn't feel like pretending. Around 10, Claire started yawning. Walter stood shaking both their hands. I'll have a decision by Friday. But I want you to know what you two have built together, both personally and professionally, is impressive. Daniel would have liked you both. The compliment hit harder than any business praise ever had. Vera found her eyes stinging. Thank you, Owen said quietly. That means everything. Elena walked them to the door. In the foyer away from her parents, she pulled Vera into a hug. For what it's worth, Elena whispered, I'm rooting for you. Both of you. And not just because my father likes your pitch. When she pulled back, there was something knowing in her eyes, like she could see exactly what Vera was still trying not to admit to herself. The Uber ride back to the hotel was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Charged, heavy with everything that had happened, everything that had been said. When they got back to the suite, Owen immediately loosened his tie, heading for the windows. He stood there looking out at the Portland skyline, his shoulders tight with tension. We should talk, Vera said. Should we? Owen didn't turn around. You told them we were engaged. I did. Owen, I'm sorry. His voice was rough. I panicked. Marcus was about to blow everything up. And I said the first thing that came into my head. The first thing that came into your head was that we're engaged, apparently. Owen finally turned. His expression was raw, exposed. But I meant it, Vera. Every word. Maybe not the timeline, we're definitely not engaged in any official sense, but the rest of it. About knowing 8 years ago, about wanting you, about being terrified but doing it anyway. Vera's heart was hammering. So what are we doing, really? I don't know. Owen crossed to her, stopped right in front of her, close enough to touch but not touching. Tell me what you want. Not what you think you should want. Not what makes sense for the company. What do you actually want? Vera looked at him, at this man who'd been beside her for 4 years, who'd apparently been in love with her for 8, who'd just spent an entire evening defending their fake engagement so passionately that even she had started to believe it. I want to stop lying, she said quietly. I want to stop pretending. She stopped, made herself say it. I want whatever this is between us to be real. Something in Owen's expression cracked wide open. Yeah, like really real. Not just for the pitch, not just for Walter. Really real. Vera reached up her palm, settling against his jaw. I don't know what that looks like yet. Don't know if we're engaged or dating or just figuring it out. But I know I'm tired of being afraid. And I know that when Marcus said we were lying, the only part that felt like a lie was the part where we said we weren't together. Owen's hand came up to cover hers. So we're together. We're something. Something sounds good. Something sounds, he stopped, laughed softly. Vera Hayes, are you agreeing to date your business partner? I think I'm agreeing to marry him, actually. Eventually. If he ever officially asks instead of just telling other people we're engaged. Owen's smile was brilliant, unguarded. I have to buy a ring first. Do you, Maj? Yes, This requires a ring and flowers and probably some grand, romantic gesture that involves. Vera pulled him down and kissed him. This kiss was different from the one earlier. Less tentative, more certain. Owen's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Vera let herself sink into it. Let herself stop thinking about the company and the pitch and all the logical reasons this was complicated. Let herself just feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "We're really doing this," he said. "We're really doing this. Walter's going to ask about a wedding date. We'll figure it out." Vera, Owen. She looked at him. "For once in your life, stop planning. Stop calculating. Just," she kissed him again softer. "Just be here, with me, in this moment. Everything else can wait. Even the pitch decision, even that." Owen pulled her closer. "I can do that." They stood there wrapped around each other, the Portland city lights glittering outside the windows. Somewhere in the distance, it started to rain. The sound was gentle against the glass, soothing. "Stay with me tonight," Owen said quietly. "Not on the couch, not pretending, just stay." Vera looked up at him, at his dark eyes and the vulnerability written across his face. At 4 years of careful distance, finally closing. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay." Vera woke to pale morning light filtering through the hotel windows and the unfamiliar weight of an arm draped across her waist. For one disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Portland, the pitch, Marcus Elena Walters' house, the kiss, Owen, saying stay. She'd stayed. They'd fallen asleep wrapped around each other, still in their dinner clothes, too exhausted and overwhelmed to do anything except hold on. Owen's face was buried in her hair, his breathing deep and even. In sleep, all his careful walls were gone. He looked younger, softer, like the version of himself he never let anyone see. Vera turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, but Owen's eyes opened immediately, dark and alert, and full of something that made her chest tight. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi. You're still here." "I'm still here." Vera's hand came up, fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Did you think I'd run? Wouldn't blame you if you did." Owen's voice was rough with sleep. "Last night was a lot." An understatement. His arm tightened around her waist. "Vera, I meant what I said. All of it. About wanting this to be real. About, I know." She kissed him softly. "I meant it too." They lay there in the morning quiet, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 4 years, Vera let herself just be present. No thinking about the company, no worrying about outcomes. Just this Owen's warmth, his steady breathing, the way his thumb traced lazy circles on her hip. "What time is it?" Owen asked eventually. Vera glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 7:30. "We should probably get up, check emails, see if Walter." Owen. "Yeah. For once in your life, can we just stay in bed and for 5 more minutes without planning?" Owen's laugh was soft against her hair. "I can try." They lasted 3 minutes before both their phones started buzzing simultaneously. Owen groaned, reaching for his on the nightstand. Vera grabbed hers from where it had fallen on the floor. "Walter Gaines." Email sent to both of them. Vera's heart stopped. She looked at Owen. He was staring at his phone, expression unreadable. "Do we read it together?" Vera asked. "I don't know if I can." Owen set down his phone. "What if it's a no? What if Marcus destroyed everything? What if? Then we'll figure it out." Vera took his hand. "Together, like you said." Owen nodded, picked up his phone again. On three. 1, 2, 3. They opened the email. "Dear Owen and Vera, thank you for your presentation yesterday. After careful consideration and conversations with my family, I've decided to move forward with Hayes and Blake Marketing for the Gaines Properties account. But I need you to understand why. It's not because of your pitch, though it was excellent. It's not because of your numbers or your strategy or your creative vision, though all of those were impressive. It's because of what happened at dinner last night. You could have lied. When Marcus exposed you, you could have doubled down, insisted you were married, made up more elaborate stories. Instead, you told me the truth, or at least a version of it that was close enough to truth to matter. My son Daniel spent his entire marriage hiding parts of himself, being afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to be seen. And when Rachel left, he didn't know how to reach out, didn't know how to be real with anyone because he'd spent so long performing. You two, even when you were lying about being married, you were being real with each other. I saw it yesterday morning on our run. I saw it at dinner. I saw it in how you held hands like you couldn't help it. Elena reminded me of something Daniel used to say. The best partnerships are the ones where you can be your worst self and still have someone choose to stay. I believe you two have that. And I believe that whatever your company builds will have that same foundation honesty even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Welcome to the Gaines family. My lawyer will send over contracts tomorrow. Also, I expect a wedding invitation. Claire is already planning her outfit. Best Walter Vera read the email 3 times, then looked at Owen. He was staring at his phone like it might disappear if he looked away. We got it, Owen said quietly. We got it. He's investing in us because we told the truth about lying. Vera started laughing. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. The relief, the terror. That's the most Walter Gaines thing I've ever heard. Owen pulled her into his arms. His shoulders were shaking. For a terrifying moment, Vera thought he was crying. Then she realized he was laughing too. They lay there holding each other, laughing and maybe crying a little while. The morning light grew stronger and the city woke up outside their windows. We have to get married now, Owen said eventually. He's expecting a wedding invitation. Is that your proposal because it needs work? That wasn't my proposal. My proposal's going to be... He stopped, pulled back to look at her. Actually, I don't know what it's going to be. I've been planning it in my head for 4 years, and now that it's actually happening, every idea I had sounds stupid. Vera touched his face. Owen Blake, are you nervous? Terrified. Good, me too. She kissed him. How about we get through today first? Tell the team, handle the contracts, and then what? Then you can ask me properly, with a ring and everything. You want a ring? I want the moment, the real moment, not performed for anyone else, just us. Owen's expression went soft, vulnerable. I can do that. They flew back to Seattle that afternoon. The plane was half empty and they'd gotten upgraded to first-class Walters, doing apparently along with a bottle of champagne that was waiting at their seats with a note, congratulations, on everything. Going to see, Owen held Vera's hand through takeoff, through the turbulence over the mountains, through the descent into Seattle's gray skies, like he was afraid if he let go, she might disappear. We need to tell Julia, Vera said as they waited for their bags at Carousel. We need to tell everyone. But Julia first. She'll never forgive us if she finds out from someone else. Owen nodded. Tonight. They took separate cars home. Owen to his apartment in Capitol Hill, Vera to hers in Queen Anne. They needed to shower, change, decompress, process everything that had happened in the last 3 days. But as Vera stood in her apartment looking at the same furniture, the same view, the same life she'd had before Portland, everything felt different. She felt different, like she'd left as one person and come back as someone else entirely. Her phone rang. Julia, please tell me you got the deal, Julia said instead of hello. We got the deal. Julia screamed, actually screamed. Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm calling everyone. We're celebrating tonight. That bar on Pine 12. Julia, wait. No waiting. This is happening. 7 p.m. Be there or I'm coming to drag you out of your apartment myself. She hung up. Vera stared at her phone. Well, so much for telling Julia privately. Owen texted Julia, just called me. I assume you got the same treatment, Vera. She's planning a celebration. Tonight, Owen. Want to tell everyone together about the deal and about Vera. Us, Owen. Us, Vera smiled at her phone. Together, always. The bar was packed by the time Vera arrived at 7:15. The entire Hayes and Blake team had shown up, all 12 of them, plus significant others and friends. Julia had somehow managed to reserve the back room, and there were balloons and a banner that said Gaines or Bust, which now seemed prophetically accurate. Owen was already there, cornered by Thomas from accounting, who was asking detailed questions about the contract terms. When he saw Vera, his entire face changed, softened. He excused himself and crossed the room to her. Hi, he said. Hi. She wanted to kiss him, wanted to do it in front of everyone, make it real and public and undeniable. But something held her back, fear habit. The weight of 4 years of maintaining professional distance, Julia appeared shoving champagne glasses into both their hands. Speech, we need a speech, the room quieted. Everyone turned to look at them, these 12 people who'd trusted them to build something worth believing in, who'd stayed through the lean months and the uncertainty and the very real possibility that they'd all be unemployed by Christmas. Owen looked at Vera. She nodded. We got the Gaines contract, Owen said. The room erupted in cheers. He waited for them to quiet. Walter Gaines is investing in Hayes and Blake, which means we're not just surviving anymore. We're growing, we're hiring, we're building something that's going to last. More cheers, more champagne popping. Vera saw Rachel from Creative crying happy tears, saw Thomas looking relieved, saw Julia beaming like a proud parent. But, Vera added, the room quieted again. We need to tell you something else, something personal. Julia's eyes went wide. She mouthed, oh my God. Owen and I, Vera stopped, looked at him. He was watching her with an expression that made her heart race. We're together, like together, not just business partners anymore. The room went completely silent. Then Julia screamed again. I knew it. She was bouncing. I knew it. Rachel, you owe me $50. I told you they were in love. You bet on us, Owen asked, somewhere between amused and appalled. Everyone bet on you, Julia was grinning. This has been the worst kept secret in Seattle marketing for like 2 years. We were just waiting for you both to figure it out. Vera felt her face heating. 2 years. Longer, honestly, Rachel said. Remember the holiday party last year? You two slow danced to 3 songs in a row and then spent 20 minutes standing outside in the snow, just talking. We all went home and started a betting pool. On what? Vera asked, almost afraid of the answer. On when you'd get together. I had March, Julia had February, Thomas had... Rachel paused. Actually, Thomas had Portland business trip. Thomas, did you somehow know? Thomas looked sheepish. I may have overheard some planning conversations, and Julia may have mentioned the Gaines' preference for married couples. And I may have done some math. Vera looked at Owen. He was trying very hard not to laugh. Our team bet on when we'd get together. Our team has apparently been waiting for this longer than we have. So, Julia pushed forward, eyes bright. Are you just dating, or is this, like, serious? Vera felt Owen's hand find hers. Watched him take a breath. Watched him make a choice. We're engaged, he said. The room exploded. Julia was hugging them both. Rachel was crying again. Thomas was shaking Owen's hand so enthusiastically it looked painful. Someone started chanting speech again. Owen pulled Vera close, his arm around her waist, and she let herself lean into him in a way she never had before. Not in the office, not in public, not where people could see and judge and wonder. There's no big story, Owen said to the room. No dramatic proposal yet. We're still figuring it out. But, he looked down at Vera, but we're doing it together, which is how we've always done everything that mattered. The celebration lasted until midnight. By the time Vera and Owen escaped pleading exhaustion and early meetings, her face hurt from smiling, and she'd had more champagne than was probably wise. Owen insisted on driving her home. They sat in his car outside her building, neither of them moving to get out. That went well, Vera said finally. Did it? Julia's happy, the team's happy. We saved the company and came out to our entire staff in one night. I'd call that a win. Are you happy? Owen asked quietly. Vera turned to look at him. Yeah, I am. Are you getting there, John? He reached over, taking her hand. I told everyone we're engaged, but I never actually asked you. Not for real. Not the way I wanted to. Owen, it's fine. It's not fine. His voice was firm. You said you wanted the moment. The real moment. Just us. And I want to give you that. Not because Walter's expecting a wedding invitation. Not because our team is excited. Because you deserve to be asked properly by someone who's been wanting to ask you for 4 years. Vera's throat felt tight. When? Soon. Owen brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I promise. Soon. Soon turned out to be 3 days later. Vera spent those days in a strange state of suspended animation. Work continued, contracts with Walter, new projects, hiring plans. But everything felt slightly surreal, like she was living in two timelines simultaneously, the one where she was a newly successful business owner and the one where she was apparently engaged to her business partner of 4 years. Owen had been different since Portland, more open, more tactile. He touched her constantly now, hand on her lower back in meetings, fingers brushing hers when they passed papers back and forth, stolen kisses in empty conference rooms. Like he was making up for 4 years of careful distance all at once. Julia was in heaven. She'd already started a Pinterest board for wedding ideas, despite Vera's protest that they hadn't even discussed a date yet. On Wednesday evening, Owen texted, "Can you come over tonight around 8, Vera?" "Your place, Owen." "Yeah, I want to show you something." He'd been cryptic all day. Left the office early saying he had errands. Julia had given Vera a knowing look that made her deeply suspicious. At 8 p.m. exactly, Vera stood outside Owen's apartment in Capitol Hill. She'd been here before a handful of times over the years for work-related emergencies, or when he'd been sick and she'd brought him soup. But this felt different. She was arriving not as his business partner, but as what his girlfriend, his fiancée, his person. The door opened before she could knock. "Hi," Owen said. He looked nervous, hair slightly messed up like he'd been running his hands through it, wearing jeans and a button-down instead of his usual suit. "Hi, what's this about? Come in, please." Vera stepped inside. The apartment looked exactly the same, minimalist, clean, the kind of space that belonged to someone who spent all their time at the office. But there was something different. Candles. Dozens of them scattered across every flat surface. "Owen, I know it's cheesy." He was fidgeting with his watch. "Julia said candles were romantic. I told her this wasn't a romance novel, but she insisted. And now I'm thinking maybe this was a terrible—" Vera kissed him. "It's perfect." Owen relaxed slightly. Yeah, yeah." She looked around. "Is this or you—" "I'm going to propose to you, properly this time. Is that okay? I know we technically already told everyone we're engaged, but I needed to actually ask you. For real, before any of this goes further." Vera's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. "Okay, okay." Owen took her hand, leading her through the apartment, to the balcony. The view from Owen's balcony was stunning. All of downtown Seattle spread out below them, the Space Needle lit up in the distance, Elliott Bay dark and glittering beyond. He'd set up a small table out here with more candles and 2 glasses of wine. "I planned a whole speech," Owen said as they stood there, the cool Seattle evening wrapping around them. "Spent 3 days writing that, memorized it, practiced in the mirror like an idiot. And now that you're here, I can't remember a single word." He laughed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm terrible at this." "You're doing fine." "I'm really not." Owen turned to face her fully, took both her hands in his. "Okay, here goes. Vera Hayes, I met you 4 years ago at a conference in San Francisco. You spilled a coffee on my laptop and apologized so many times I thought you might never stop. And I remember thinking this woman is either the clumsiest person I've ever met or the most considerate. Turned out you were both." Vera felt her eyes stinging. "You gave a presentation that day on emotional branding, on how people don't buy products, they buy stories. They buy feelings. They buy the version of themselves they want to become. And I sat there in that dark conference room watching you present, and I thought, that's it. That's the story I want. That's the person I want to become. The version of me that's brave enough to talk to the woman with coffee-stained hands and see if she might want dinner." "You never asked me to dinner," Vera said quietly. "No, because you were married and I was a coward. So instead I waited for you to get divorced, waited for the right moment, waited 4 goddamn years building a company with you while pretending I only wanted a business partnership." Owen pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Vera's breath caught. "I'm done waiting," Owen said. "Done pretending. Done being careful. Vera Hayes, you are the most brilliant, stubborn, beautiful person I've ever met. You make me want to be braver, better, more real. And I know this is fast and complicated and probably terrifying for both of us. But I also know that I've been yours for 4 years, maybe 8. Maybe from the moment you apologized for the 17th time about that laptop." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond on a platinum band. Exactly what Vera would have chosen if she'd been asked. So I'm asking you now, for real. Not for Walter Gaines. Not for the company. Not for anyone except us. Owen's voice cracked slightly. Will you marry me? Vera looked at the ring, at Owen's face, at the Seattle skyline spread out behind him like a promise. She thought about 4 years of coffee runs and late nights, about Marcus and Elena and Walter, about fake marriages that turned real, about all the careful walls she'd built after her divorce, and how Owen had somehow walked through every single one without her even noticing. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Owen's relief was visceral. He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Owen noticed everything. I love you, he said. I should have led with that. I love you, Vera. I have for years. I love you too. And the words felt strange and right and terrifying. I think I have for a while. I didn't let myself see it. You see it now. Yeah, I see it now. Owen pulled her into his arms. They stood there on his balcony wrapped around each other while the city breathed below them and the future spread out like the dark water of Elliott Bay, vast and uncertain and full of possibility. When, Owen asked eventually. When what? When do you want to get married? Walter's expecting an invitation. Our team is expecting a party. I'm expecting, he stopped. I'm expecting to marry you as soon as legally possible because waiting another 4 years sounds like torture. Vera laughed. What about next month? Next month? Too soon. Not soon enough, but I'll take it. Owen kissed her, long and slow and full of promise. We have a lot to plan. We do. Julia's going to lose her mind. Oh God, Julia. Vera pressed her face into Owen's chest. She's going to have a Pinterest board the size of Seattle by morning. Let her. We'll have the wedding we want. Small, simple, just people we love. Owen pulled back to look at her. Unless you want something big. No, small is perfect. Maybe an idea formed. Maybe Portland, at the viewpoint where we ran with Walter full circle. Owen's expression went soft. Portland, yeah, that's perfect. 6 months later, the morning dawned gray over Portland, but by noon the clouds had broken apart to reveal perfect blue skies. Vera stood at the window of the Sentinel Hotel's bridal suite, looking out at the Willamette River, and feeling like the last 6 months had passed in a blur of contracts and growth and planning. Hayes and Blake Marketing had expanded, hired 6 new people, moved to a bigger office, landed 3 major clients on the strength of the Gaines contract. Everything they'd worked for was finally actually happening. But more than that, she was getting married. You look terrified, Julia said, appearing beside her with a glass of champagne. It's your wedding day. You're supposed to look happy. I am happy and terrified. Both can be true. Fair. Julia handed her the champagne. Drink, doctor's orders, well-made of honors orders. Same difference. Vera took a sip. The bubbles helped. Is Owen is having a minor breakdown in his suite. Rachel's handling it, something about his tie being the wrong shade of blue. I told her to just take it away and make him wear whatever was closest. That sounds like him. He's nervous. Julia smiled. It's cute. Like he's been waiting 4 years for this, and now that it's actually happening, he's convinced something's going to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. Damn right. Julia squeezed her hand. You two are disgustingly perfect for each other. You know the entire office has a betting pool on how long until you announce you're pregnant. Julia Boyan, what I'm just saying. The way he looks at you now, give it 6 months. She checked her watch. Okay, we have an hour. Hair and makeup are almost done. Your dress is steamed and ready. Walter and Claire are here. Elena flew in from San Francisco. Even Marcus sent flowers. Vera blinked. Marcus sent flowers. With a note that said, you made the right choice. I thought about throwing them away, but figured that was mature of him and you might appreciate the gesture. It was mature. The Marcus she'd divorced 2 years ago would have never admitted he was wrong about anything. Maybe people could change. Maybe closure was possible, even after everything had ended badly. The wedding ceremony was at the viewpoint, the same spot where they'd run with Walter 6 months ago. Vera walked down a makeshift aisle lined with white chairs, the river glittering below the city, spread out like a blessing. Owen stood at the end, and when he saw her, his entire face transformed. Chiyemeon. She'd seen that look before. In Portland, when he'd admitted he'd been in love with her for 8 years. When he'd proposed on his balcony. Every morning when she woke up beside him and found him already awake watching her like she was something precious. But this was different. This was Owen looking at her and seeing his wife. Seeing their future. Seeing all the careful walls they'd both maintained finally fully coming down. The ceremony was short, simple. They'd written their own vows. Vera, Owen said, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. 4 years ago, you spilled coffee on my laptop and I fell in love with you. I didn't tell you then. Didn't tell you for years, and I regret all that wasted time. But I don't regret where we ended up. Because every late night, every client meeting, every moment of building this company together was also building us, building this. So I promise no more waiting, no more pretending, just you and me facing whatever comes next together. Vera's turn. She took a breath. Owen, when I met you, I was still married to someone else, still convinced I knew what love looked like. And then I got divorced and rebuilt my life and started a company with you. And somewhere in there, somewhere between the coffee runs and the spreadsheets and the 3 a.m. crisis management sessions, I fell in love without realizing it. You taught me that love doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. It can be quiet, steady. Someone remembering how you take your coffee, someone standing beside you when everything's falling apart and saying, we'll figure it out. So I promise to be that for you, every day for the rest of our lives. Walter Gaines, sitting in the front row beside Claire, was wiping his eyes. Elena was filming on her phone, not even trying to hide her tears. Julia was sobbing into Rachel's shoulder. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said. You may kiss. Owen was already kissing her, long and deep and full of every promise they just made and all the ones they'd been making to each other for years without saying the words. When they finally pulled apart, the small group of people they loved was cheering. Vera looked at Owen, her husband, her partner, her person, and felt something in her chest settle into place. Hi, wife, Owen said. Hi, husband. That was terrifying. You were perfect. I forgot half my vows. You said exactly what you needed to say. Vera touched his face. Ready to go be married. I've been ready for 8 years. The reception was at Walter's house, the same back deck where Marcus had tried to expose them. But this time there was no performance, no lies, just Vera and Owen dancing to a song they'd chosen together, surrounded by people who'd watched them fall in love without either of them realizing it was happening. Walter pulled Owen aside at one point. Vera watched them talk, saw Owen laugh at something Walter said, saw the older man pat Owen's shoulder like a proud father. When Owen came back, his eyes were bright. What did he say? Vera asked. He said Daniel would have liked you, would have liked us, and that he wished his son had been brave enough to be this real with someone. Owen pulled her closer. He also said he's glad his investment paid off in more ways than one. We should probably send him a thank you gift. I already did. Every year on the anniversary of our fake engagement, we're sending him a bottle of that whiskey he likes, with a note that says, thanks for believing in liars who were telling the truth. Vera laughed. That's perfect. They danced until the stars came out, until the lights of Portland spread below them like promises, until Julia started yawning and the crowd began to thin. Around midnight, Vera and Owen escaped, went back to their suite at the Sentinel, the same one they'd stayed in 6 months ago, when everything was fake and terrifying and new. But this time there was no performance, no careful distance, just them. We're married, Vera said, collapsing onto the bed. We're married, Owen agreed, lying beside her. We did it. We actually did it. Did you have doubts? A few? Vera turned to look at him. Did you? Not for a second. Owen pulled her close. From the moment you kissed me in this hotel room 6 months ago, I knew this was it. You were it. Everything else was just details. Important details, like contracts and rings and not committing fraud. Minor details. He kissed her forehead. Vera Blake. That's going to take some getting used to. You could hyphenate. Vera Hayes Blake sounds like a law firm. It kinda does. Owen was playing with her hair, that small smile on his face. The real one, not the business one. We could make it our legal name, Hayes Blake Enterprises. We already have a company name. We could have multiple companies. Owen Blake, are you planning our business expansion on our wedding night? Maybe. He pulled her on top of him. Or maybe I'm just trying to distract myself from the fact that I married the woman I have been in love with since she destroyed my laptop with caffeinated beverages. It was one laptop and it was your fault. It was entirely your fault, but I forgive you, because look where it led us. Vera kissed him, long and slow and full of everything they'd been too afraid to say for too long. Portland, at a wedding that was fake before it was real. Best fake wedding I've ever had. Only fake wedding. Still the best. Owen rolled them over, settling between her legs. Now, about our wedding night. We're not discussing business plans. Agreed, no business, just us. Just us, Vera agreed. 3 months later, Vera stood at the window of their new shared apartment, halfway between Capitol Hill and Queen Anne, big enough for both of them and the life they were building, and watched Seattle wake up. Owen's arms came around her from behind his chin, resting on her shoulder. Morning, he murmured. Morning. She leaned back into him. Did you see Julia's text? The one about her wedding next month. She wants us to plan it. Of course she does. She planned ours. She helped. We planned ours. Semantics. Owen kissed her neck. We should do it. Help her. Pay it forward. You want to plan Julia's wedding? I want to help someone else get their happy ending, since ours worked out so well. Vera turned in his arms, looked at her husband. 3 months of marriage and she still wasn't used to how good it felt to call him that. You're such a romantic. Only for you. That's not what Julia says. She says you've been smiling at everyone in the office. That it's unsettling. I'm happy. Should I apologize for being happy? No. Vera kissed him. But maybe tone it down. You're making the single people uncomfortable. Owen laughed. Noted. I'll try to be more professionally miserable. They stood there wrapped around each other, watching the city they'd built a life in. Vera thought about Walter Gaines and his question 6 months ago. How do you know when you found something real? She knew now. It was this. Owen's arms around her. The easy silence. The way they'd learned to be vulnerable with each other, one careful wall at a time. The knowledge that someone saw all her worst parts and chose to stay anyway. Vera, Owen said quietly, yeah, I love you, just in case I don't say it enough. You say it constantly. Still, I love you. I love you too. She pulled back to look at us. Even though you sit in the wrong seats at conferences. It was one time, it changed everything. Yeah. Owen's smile was soft. Real. It really did. Outside, Seattle stretched toward the water, full of stories and coffee shops and people falling in love without realizing it. But inside this apartment in this moment, Vera and Owen had everything they needed. Each other. Their truth. Their future spreading out like that first morning in Portland when everything had been fake and terrifying and new. Except now, it was real. All of it. The love, the commitment, the choice to keep choosing each other every single day. Ready to start the day, Owen asked. Ready to start the rest of our lives, Vera countered, right? Already started. 6 months ago, or 4 years ago, or 8 years ago at a conference in San Francisco. So really, we're just continuing. Exactly. Owen took her hand, together. Like we always have been, like we always will be. Together, Vera agreed, and meant it with everything she had. 2 years later, Hayes Blake Marketing won the Seattle Business Journal's Fastest Growing Company Award. Julia was promoted to VP of Operations. Rachel became Creative Director. Owen and Vera opened a second office in Portland. Walter Gaines attended the opening ceremony, brought Claire and Elena, gave a speech about believing in people even when they're afraid to believe in themselves. Marcus sent flowers. Again. The card said, proud of you. Both of you. And Vera kept them this time. On their second anniversary, Owen took Vera back to the Viewpoint in Portland. They stood where they'd gotten married, where they'd run with Walter, where everything had started to shift from fake to real. Happy anniversary, Owen said. Happy anniversary. Vera leaned against him. Thank you. For what? For being patient, for waiting, for loving me before I knew how to love you back. It was worth it. Owen kissed the top of her head. Every second of waiting, every moment of pretending, every late night and every crisis, and every time I wanted to tell you how I felt but couldn't. All of it. Worth it. They stood there as the sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Two people who'd started as partners became friends, pretended to be married, and ended up building a life more real than anything they planned. Owen, Vera said quietly. Yeah, I'm pregnant. His arms tightened around her. She felt him take a shaky breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Yeah, found out this morning, wanted to tell you here, where it all started. This is Owen turned her to face him. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. This is everything. You're everything. We're everything, Vera corrected. You, me, and now, she placed his hand on her stomach. This, Owen's laugh was pure joy. Julia's going to lose her mind. Julia's going to win the betting pool. Of course she is. Owen pulled Vera close, kissed her like it was the first time and the thousandth time all at once. I love you. I love you so goddamn much. I love you too. Vera touched his face. My partner, my person, my 3-day husband who turned into forever. Forever, Kiro, Owen agreed, starting from that very first day. And as the Portland sunset painted them in light, as the river flowed below, and the city breathed around them, Vera and Owen stood together exactly where they were always meant to be. The end.